So it's all to play for still.
I think so. Do you want to bet against us?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast. This is take 3 of this video. For whatever reason, my computer setup has been corrupting this file every time I've done it. I don't know. Maybe it's I don't know. Maybe someone just doesn't want this information out there or something. Let's get right conspiratorial with it. But no, in all seriousness, I've tried to put this up twice already. And I don't know, it was going into an hour and 10 minutes of the size of a video. And to be honest with you, I didn't really even like how long it was. So I'm going to try and abridge it a small bit, keep this one maybe about 20-25 minutes and try not to go into as much detail, because a lot of what I could talk about, I think, on this one is stuff that we will probably say between now and the end of the season anyway. So I don't want to be repeating myself over and over again. But this is the long fabled and long awaited. Well, I don't know if it's long awaited by you guys, but it's long awaited by me, because I've been trying to bloody get it up for the last 4 days. Is the Steven Gerrard kind of just a look at some trends and some bits and pieces that we've looked at. So what I've done with this is I've taken every single one of Steven Gerrard's games and I've broken it down, created a little spreadsheet with it, broken it down in relation to formation, the average layout of positions for each game, looked at what centre-back partnerships, midfield partnerships and strike partnerships that Steven Gerrard wanted to look at, and also looking at any of the substitutions made to see if I can garner any trends or any kind of patterns, I suppose, to the way that Steven Gerrard is looking at more so the team and the players that we have, okay? So there's two aspects to this. Here's my caveat. I know that a lot of people are going to message underneath this and say, Steven Gerrard is no better than Tim Sherwood. I'm fully aware that some people believe that. This is not me trying to convince you Steven Gerrard is better than Tim Sherwood. Okay? We get that one out of the way quickly. This is not me trying to convince you Steven Gerrard is better than Dean Smith. Everybody knows I love Dean Smith. I actually found my Smith in t-shirt. The t-shirts that I had made, I've donated to some charity somewhere, but I found my one that I kept. It's still inside in the house. Big Dean Smith fan here. I also do have a lot of, I suppose, when I was looking at this under a wider lens with all the games in one go, I do have a bit more of a kind of, I've got questions, I suppose, but questions with regards to really what Steven Gerrard's brief has been over the last 20 games and what he needs to do with the team specifically. And I know everybody should say, well, it's win, isn't it? We need to win. I think that because we've had, obviously we've had an overhaul of people since Patash has been in here. Dean Smith started off the start of the season. We bought the 100 million player worth of players in Danny Ings, in Leon Bailey and Buendia. And I think what's happening here is that Steven Gerrard has been given his piece that he wanted in Coutinho and in Digne, who I think has been two very, very good signings. And he's been kind of tasked with figuring out where the rest of the squad fits in to what he wants to do going forward. And that's not to say that he's rigidly going to stick to the 210s or the 29s that he plays, but that's kind of my caveat at the start of this. Okay, so I'm not here to convince you. This isn't a video it's going to convince you or going to try to convince you. It's going to be some good things I'm going to mention about Steven Gerrard. There's going to be some bad things I'm going to mention, but there's also some hypotheses that I have here as well. You can believe them if you want. It's just based on who he's played, partnerships he's put in there, and things that have happened throughout the course of the season. Okay, so that's just a little caveat at the start before I get this, because I know that a lot of people don't particularly are in a kind of a lull with Steven Gerrard at the moment. Maybe feel he says the same things in interviews after every game, yet he's not doing anything on the field. And this isn't for me to convince you that you're wrong with that. I don't really have any opinion on that at all. If that's the opinion you hold, that's fine. But this isn't me saying that you're wrong. This is me just putting out my side of what I've seen when I've looked at every game under a wide lens, because you could very, very well be right. So I don't really know. I don't pay any attention to a lot of that, to be honest with you. I just kind of want to look at what's on the field, what formations, maybe look at what's happening in games and things like that, and try and see if there's reasons why maybe things didn't fall into place like we would have thought that they would have. So let's take a look at some of the things. So very much this is very much a spreadsheet podcast, and you will see that I'm going to start sharing a spreadsheet that I have here and analyzing some of the games. If you'd seen the most recent Leicester preview podcast, you would have seen this previously. But what I wanted to do is I just wanted to kind of go down through some of the games, look at them in their I suppose just as a snapshot of personnel, setup, substitutions made, so that we can kind of gather what Gerrard can really actually affect on the field. Because remember, a manager has two real aspects to him being a manager as such, and one of them is to set the team up for success, and the other one is to maybe improve the team as we go throughout the course of the year. So and maybe there's reasons why those didn't happen, why we haven't been able to improve the team. Maybe there's reasons why we haven't been able to. I don't know. I don't have all the answers to that in this, obviously, because I'm just a guy at home with a fucking spreadsheet looking through whatever statistic sites I can find. I do have a scouting site as well that I use, but it's not really. It's fine for this, but you can get most of the stuff that you need on free websites to kind of garner any information that I've gotten here. But let's just start. Steven Gerrard obviously came in after we were on a bit of a streak of misfortune. I think Steven Gerrard comes in and we had a 2-0 win against Brighton. 2 goals scored there in that game. 1 scored by Watkins, 1 scored by Mings. The formation we played there was the traditional Steven Gerrard 2-10s formation. When we played against Brighton, and this was one of the things that we knew that Steven Gerrard was going to come in. Michael Beale had spoken about it. There's a lot of literature out there of Michael Beale giving seminars with regards to his philosophy within the game and so on. When you hear about coaches talking about their philosophy, no coach, and I can guarantee you this, no coach is 100%, million% rigid within their philosophy. Maybe with the exception of somebody like Mourinho, but then again, Mourinho had tons of success. With regards to, you could say Big Sam as well, and arguably people think that Big Sam has had massive success in his career as well. Keeping teams up for me is it's you don't get any polished trophies at the end of the day, at the end of the year for that. But he does what he does pretty well, or he did at least, and he did serve a purpose. Did Big Sam in English football, and I know that the town I'm from here in Ireland is very, very thankful for him, Limerick City, because he was player manager of Limerick City for a period of time. But anyway, what I was mentioning here was obviously the formation that started off was the 2-10s formation. And what we can see here is this positional map here. And I hope that you guys can see this, because when we look at the way that this team sets up, as one of the biggest things, and spoiler alert, and this is, you guys will know this from watching our podcast, our setup has changed immeasurably over the course of the year. And this, to me, means that if people are kind of concerned that Steven Gerrard is too rigid in his tactics, well, look how this has changed. If he's too rigid in his tactics, you're going to see that things have changed all over the place with regards to how the team is set up from day one here. And as we look through maybe the early part of the season, we set up in one way, and then when the personnel that we had changed, we set up in a completely different way. So one of the hypotheses that I can have with regards to looking at this is that the rigidity that people sometimes label of Steven Gerrard's setup, and I've done myself over the past, may not be as factual as I once thought it was. We had a centre-back partnership of Mings and Konsa this day. The midfield was Nakamba, Ramsey and McGinn. And I am sorry, but I'm going to keep on making up for any spelling mistakes that I see here. So I'll be marking my own homework just in case anybody else is watching. And the strikers we had were Buendia, Watkins, and Ings. Now you'll see from time here that there will be times where we will have Watkins and Ings on the team where it will be a 2-10s formation, and that's really because Watkins did kind of play as a 10 when Steven Gerrard first came in. he didn't play as that number one striker, and he was given a kind of a roving role. And it was only then when we moved to kind of playing with the two strikers that it became more apparent as to what we were doing when Coutinho came into the team. So, just a lot of people would say, well, we've got two strikers in the field there. Is that not two nines? In this instance, Watkins was played in a more withdrawn role. And that was a thing at the start of Steven Gerrard's tenure with the team. When we look at our shot map here against Brighton, if you remember, this game as well was pretty abject. We were only all right. Brighton were worse than us, and the day, I think, was really the big thing from this. We scored 2 goals later on in the game. We made some changes that really kind of brought the kind of brought the best out of the team. But we got 2 late goals. Like we didn't score until 5 minutes from the end. If we remember, Ollie Watkins scores. I think it was something like the 84th minute, and then Mings scored with more or less the last kick of the game. I think it was 90th, 91st minute or something like that. So, we didn't exactly go out and control this game. This was a game whereby we really felt our way into it. The 2-0 scoreline kind of flattered us, if for want of a better word, because, we didn't own possession in this game. We didn't, we had a decent enough expected goals in this. We were passed off the field by Brighton. Like they had over 60% possession in this game. We didn't create a massive amount of big chances. We weren't very accurate with our passing. So there were aspects of this game that were not perfect. Tyrone Mings scored from a corner, if you guys remember that, and then Ollie Watkins scored. We just had a fast break, and Ollie Watkins scored a pretty good goal in the 84th minute as well. So we did have more shots in the game than Brighton. So we did more in an attacking sense, but we didn't have an awful lot of the ball. So it wasn't a perfect performance by any stretch of the imagination here. One of the things that you'll see from this game is we take a look at some of the substitutions that were made throughout the game. So some of the subs that were brought on there, you've got Bailey was brought on for Ings. Ashley Young was brought on for Buendia, and Ashley Young got an assist in that game as well. And El Ghazi was brought on for Ramsey. So do you guys remember when we were bringing on El Ghazi left, right, and centre at the start of the season? Yeah, and he's gone to Everton and isn't really getting much of a sniff at Everton now. But that's the way our first game went. Like, our first game wasn't perfect by any means a stretch of the imagination, but the biggest takeaway from this first game was, for me, is our positional setup here. And you look at it, Nakamba is fitting in as a third centre half, and we, that was pivotal in the way that Steven Gerrard did want us to set up at the start of the season. We can see our fullbacks went high, but they didn't go massively high. Yeah, they went as far as the halfway line. We can see that we have a wider base in midfield with regards to McGinn and Ramsey. We can see that they're a bit wider. Yes, we're conceding a lot of space in the middle of midfield, but we're also kind of, it's like the flying V formation. If any of you have seen Mighty Ducks, the film, that's the way our attack kind of filtered out. So we were able to protect the fast break coming into the middle of midfield. We had men back with regards to Nakamba, Tyrone Mings and Konza, and we can see that we're not exactly a low block here when we're defending, but we're not exactly really high pressed up as well. We have players back there that can fill in. So the structure of this for me is okay. Yeah, we're conceding places in the midfield or conceding space in the midfield, and like this is why Aston Villa kind of want to get a team kind of set up like this so that we can get Coutinho on the ball in the middle of the field here. It worked out well for us against Brighton. They didn't really have that X factor player that could come in and get somebody on the ball. They I can't remember who was playing kind of in a more advanced role for them that day, but they had the likes of, I think Lallana was behind Trossard that day, and they really wanted to kind of stifle us. They had Moder and Gross in the middle of midfield alongside Basuma, but Basuma passed the ball all day long, and he had one of his better, more metronomic games that day. So that's the first day against Brighton. Big takeaways for me were the setup that we had there, the fact that things didn't go right. We had a small change in personnel. Ashley Young came on, we scored a goal, and then we scored from a corner as well, which is something that we had lacked because we started off the season scoring lots from corners. Crystal Palace then next, the 2-1 win. Matty Targett comes up from out of nowhere and scores a goal. John McGinn is also a man possessed and scored a goal in this game. When we look at it, this game was a bit weirder because we seemed to play arguably, you could say that we played two wingers in this game. And the reason that I'm going to say that is, yes, they didn't set up as two wingers. They kind of set up as two tens, but they were tasked with breaking wide in this. So this positional map, you see me talk about positional maps. They don't tell them. They don't tell absolutely 100% the full story. So this is the average position of the players. So what we can see here is that we've got Leon Bailey and we've got Ashley Young in the middle of midfield here. Neither of the two of those would really be known as tens. They're more wider players. They did break left and right, during the course of the game. I'm classing this as a two wingers setup, even though it isn't. Okay, completely understand that two wingers isn't something you're going to see massively throughout here. But the way we played this is we condensed it in the middle of midfield. We broke wide against Crystal Palace, and we attacked them down the wings. So that's something that we did do. I suppose in hindsight, I probably would change this to two tens, but the way we played was with two more traditional wingers that were starting off inside and going wide. Probably a small bit more traditionally the way that Steven Gerrard played with Rangers. Actually, if you think about it, his two tens would start off very, very narrow, and they would break wide. With Rangers as well. Another huge thing that we see here is watch how far back Nakamba is. Once again, he's in between. The spacing between defense here is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Like, look at that spacing. Nakamba's almost playing as a third centre half. Matty Cash isn't tasked with going too far forward. Here, we've got a nice little block set up here between our McGinn and Ramsey once more. Centre back partnership is McGinn and Konza. Mings and Konza. Nakamba, Ramsey, and McGinn are the midfield partnership, and then Young, Watkins, and Bailey. Looking at our shot maps, a couple of concerning things with our shot map is that we didn't get too many shots in and around the box. Like, who's shooting from out here is like that's a worry that people are shooting from that type of an angle, because if we are creating these chances that we need to create, well, then we shouldn't be shooting from out there. And if I remember rightly, that was Ashley Young in the 24th minute, had a shot there, but it was saved. So our two goals came from Matty Targett scored from a corner, and John McGinn scored a purler from with his left foot from regular play. I think it had a tiny XG. Now, once again, Targett scored in the first half, very early on, the first 15 minutes, and McGinn scored late on in the game to kind of wrap that one up for us, because, as we know, Crystal Palace did come back with a goal from Gray in 90 plus minutes. So it was an injury time. He scored from a set piece there as well. Once again, we were passed off the park. Ball possession was 63% to Crystal Palace, 37% to Aston Villa. So Gerrard came in saying he wanted to dominate possession. He wanted to shore us up at the back. Started off being well shored up at the back. Our possession stats weren't there. And, we kind of, once again, we won this one without playing massively well. Marvelous Nakamba was fantastic in this game. John McGinn was very, very good in this game. It was one of his better games. And the two fullbacks played excellently as well in this game too. Looking at some of the substitutions made, Douglas Luiz came on to replace Jacob Ramsey. El Ghazi once again came on to replace Bailey, and Buendia didn't start this game. He came on to place Ashley Young. So when we looked at the starting teams in Gerrard's early tenure, we see that he favoured experience and people who come in there maybe get his idea ahead in Ashley Young over the likes of Buendia, who was going through a bit of a rough patch that time of the season. Moving on to the Man City game. Oops, where am I? Sorry there, guys. Moving on to Man City. So Man City are here. We lost this game 2-1. It was a home game once again. Watkins scored the goal in this game. This is the game where Kenny Chukwuemeka was through on Alisson in the last few minutes. Ederson pull off a brilliant save. We played with 2 tens here again. This was a more interesting setup, I think, that we had seen in a long time from Steven Gerrard, because we played Douglas Luiz an awful lot further forward. Like, once again, look at our setup here. Our setup here is just really good defensively. It's really good. There's no kamikaze in this team here. We have our almost like a flat 5 at the back, and we played well against Man City here. Douglas Luiz is further forward than we normally see him. Look at him here. He's in around Buendia. Realistically, I suppose, if you had to be really realistic about this, we played a 4-5-1 with Watkins kind of almost isolated up there in his own. We did have the pace of Bailey in here on the right-hand side to help out, but John McGinn was very much helping here on this to maybe nullify the likes of, I think Chancelo played in this game, and their winger prowess that they would have. But unfortunately, we didn't win this game. We didn't win this game, but we did have some shots, and we did have quite a few shots in the game. One of the big things in this, though, was that we had players injured. Players got injured, and they got injured at inopportune times. So Leon Bailey got injured in the 31st minute. He wasn't exactly playing brilliantly, but he wasn't playing poorly either when he was on the field. So he was doing okay, and it was his pace. We lost his pace, and Ashley Young came on for him on the 31st minute. Bernardo Silva scores then the 43rd minute, which was a real Ruben Diaz scored in the 27th minute, and then Bernardo Silva scored the cracker then just on the stroke of half time, which was a real gut check for us, because we looked like maybe we were getting in there at 1-0. Things weren't going massively well for us. Second half started, we scored almost straight away from Ollie Watkins, brought on Chuck Moeka, who came on for Matty Targett, which was an intriguing substitution considering we were taking off our left back and bringing on a more forward-thinking midfield player in that instance. So we brought on Chuck Moeka for Matt Targett, and Morgan Sanson came off the bench as well for Marvelous Nakamba in the 77th minute. Our old friend Jack Grealish came off the bench in the 87th minute too. As I say, Chuck Moeka missed a chance in the very last moment for that one. So it was a great save, should I say, that Ederson made. He didn't miss it. It was a great save. And this is something we could have got something out of. But once again, looking at our setup here is very intriguing. Leicester, once again, Leicester was a win for us, 2-1 win. Very much the set piece situation here. I went through this in the Leicester preview. I'm not going to go through it too much here. Konza scored 2 goals. We played with 2 10s. Our defensive setup looks really good here again, although there are gaps here. We defended back a lot further. We pushed back with our defence. I would imagine that was to try and stifle any attacks from the likes of Harvey Barnes and his massive pace that were coming, because he did score early in that game. We had Mings and Konza, centre-back partnership, midfield of Nakamba, Luis and McGinn, and strikers were Buendia, Watkins and Ramsey, which was really interesting to see Ramsey pushed further forward. We can see a lot of experimentation in Steven Gerrard's first couple of games, and it's something that I wanted to see, and it's something that I like to see. And to be honest with you, bar our centre-back partnership in our midfield, it's something that I probably want to see a small bit more of, because it tends to get very much standardized as we get down through the year. Our shot map against Leicester was brilliant. I really love this. Shots in the area, we peppered them with set pieces and crosses, and we had 2 wild ones from outside the box as well. As I mentioned, Sanson came in from Louise, Carney came on for Buendia, and Axel Tuanzebe made one of his rare appearances as he came on for Jacob Ramsey. So that is the Leicester game. On to Liverpool, and we can see once again the setup here for Liverpool. We lost 1-0 away to Liverpool here. A 4-4-1-1 formation essentially is what we played here. It was very much backs to the wall. Once again, we can see Mings was the furthest man back here. He does give away a penalty in this game to Mohamed Salah. It was actually almost nearly over in this very area of the field, contentious penalty, but we see Nakamba and Mings and Konza setting up here. Our fullbacks still maybe a bit far forward in this instance here, but we're packing the midfield. We can see here we've got a wall to stop their midfield and stop them passing through us here of Ramsey, Douglas Luiz and McGinn. And then we've got Ashley Young, who is playing up behind Ollie Watkins. So we played a different formation. So once again, we've played 3 or 4 different formations in this and setups in the first couple of games. So the rigidity that Steven Gerrard would have been labelled with wasn't really there in the first few games. Our shot map, obviously, in this game, we didn't do a whole pile. It was pretty dismal. We had 4 shots, and someone shot from an absolutely ridiculous angle out here as well. Once again, injuries were a big question of the day here. Nakamba gets injured, Sanson comes on for him, and we don't see Nakamba from here on in, and we hopefully will see him at the weekend. But Buendia comes on for Young, and Ings comes on for Ramsey. So we're seeing a lot of Sanson coming on. We're seeing a lot of Buendia coming on, and in the first couple of games. But once again, not one that we would have marked down as one that we would potentially would have won, and we came away with a 1-0 loss. Norwich then are up, and we played very well against Norwich. 2-0 win away with Ramsey and Watkins scoring. 2-10 set up here once more. We can see that now in this game, our fullbacks are gone massively forward. Watch the difference, guys. This is exactly it. This is a turning point in the season. I'm going to go so far as to say it is. Yes, we won 2-0, but look where Nakamba is here, number 19. Look where he steps out, right in between the 2 centre halves. We will not see anybody between the 2 centre halves from here on in. So there's a lot in this, and this is really where where the switch kind of flicked. I think for like our setup here is disjointed. It's look like we need players further back. We need Matty Cash needs to be further back. I know we're playing against a team that drew us on and we were expected to beat and we needed to attack against, but this wasn't just the setup that we would have had in this game. It's a trend throughout here from here on in. With Mings and Konza at the back, Louise, McGinn and Ramsey is a trend that happens from here on in as well. Buendia, Watkins and Young were the people who started off. Once again, Ashley Young being favoured again in the early in Steven Gerrard's tenure to take up that role of maybe offering a small bit of leadership at the top. We peppered their goals. We had shots from absolutely everywhere. And as I say, we had goals from Ramsey and Watkins in that day. But the substitutions made where Ings came on for Young, Carney came on for Buendia, and Tuanzebe came on for McGinn as well. So at this stage, we were really looking to play Tuanzebe really in midfield. And maybe at this stage, Steven Gerrard is even thinking, who's going to be my defensive midfielder? Because as we can see here, Douglas Luiz, if Douglas Luiz is supposed to be a 6, he ain't playing as a 6 in this. And look, I completely understand the opposition that we're playing against. But it's night and day. The two setups are night and day. You look at this as a nice setup. Well, it's obviously against Liverpool. We go back here. We look at this. It's a nice setup for the team that we have to this, whereby we're very top heavy here, and it's unfair on the two centre halves to have all this ground to cover. And no wonder they've caught out of position. Chelsea at home, then a 3-1 loss. We had a Reece James on goal was our score, and this day we played with 2 9s. So this is one of the first games we went with 2 strikers. Douglas Luiz does tend to lay back and mind the house a small bit more, but we don't have that structure in midfield. If like in previous games when we've played top teams, Nakamba is back much further, almost in between the 2 centre halves. Our fullbacks are a bit high here as well, but we can see that we've got our midfield. Actually, this is incorrect here. That's Sanson that started this game. So we have Sanson, Douglas Luiz and Ramsey that are in midfield here, and we can see that we've got Buendia, Ings and Watkins, and Ings and Watkins were played further forward in this game as well. I would imagine because at the time Chelsea were playing a 3 at the back system. Maybe it was a case of trying to push up on them, so we would have to keep their midfielders back a small bit. Didn't work, and we got beaten 3-1 in this game. Shot map, as you can see here, we were being restricted to more shots out the field, so we didn't get an awful lot of the ball, we didn't get an awful lot of progression with the ball and so on. So Chelsea, not really one that I want to get into too much depth into, just other than we can see that our formation here is beginning to scatter. After the Leicester game, after the Liverpool game, should I say, even our formation begins to scatter. We look at our formation here again once more. Our defensive midfielder is on an island and he's on the middle of midfield there. There's a complete another tram line all the way down the middle of once you take Douglas Luiz out of there, he's just literally a pin in the grenade as such, and it's waiting to explode. Our positional awareness and our positional sense against Brentford was not great. We got caught. We got caught against Brentford with 2 goals, specifically the one at the back post, the winner from the right back, whose name I can't pronounce. We lost 2-1 in this game. Danny Ings scores. They come back. They get 2 goals. We completely take our foot off the pedal here. It was a really, really strange game. It was a game where we started with Bertrand Traore and Buendia behind Danny Ings. We had McGinn, Louise and Ramsey, and we started with Courtney House and Konza because Mings was not available for this game. Really, really weird game, as I say, weird setup that we have here. And with the metronomic kind of passing that Brentford have in the middle with the likes of Yanlet and Norgard, and also the fact that they're a busy team. We just conceded so much ground in the middle of midfield, specifically in the second half, and then we got caught in the break with two pretty rubbish goals. Substitutions. Our shot map here was quite okay. Once again, a lot of shots from outside the box, which is something it's grand. They go in from time to time and they look fantastic, but it's something I'd like to see us work into the box a small bit more, specifically when you've got the craft and guile of someone like Traore up there and Buendia, and Danny Ings is a finisher, so you'd be expecting to try and get balls into the box, although he hasn't been his clinical finisher for this season, specifically with Aston Villa, which has been something that's been annoying. I know a lot of fans. We only made 2 subs in this game, a rare foray where we didn't make our 3 substitutions in the game. We brought on Sanson for Ramsey, and we brought on Trezeguet for Traore. Trezeguet's only appearance for under Steven Gerrard. We move on to Manchester United, where we drew 2-2. I've left out the FA Cup game. This is league games only. I've left out the FA Cup game, so just in case anybody's wondering where that is, I haven't put this in here. This is only league games. We drew 2-2 at Manchester United. This is the start of the Coutinho era. Jacob Ramsey and Coutinho scored our goals. We definitely played with 2 10s. Once again, when we look at our average positions here, I don't like this setup that much. Once again, I want my defensive midfielder back a small bit further. I want maybe Jacob Ramsey to be back a small bit further here. In hindsight, we were looking to get in and around Coutinho to get little short wall passes off him when he came on. Before he came on, we had Buendia in that position. And as we can see, Buendia and Ings were there just trying to get those wall passes, trying to pull defenders out of position to see if we could get in behind them. It didn't really work. And it waited for us. We had to turn it on when Coutinho came on. We really turned on the style, and we could have won this game 3-2. For sure. But once again, looking at our defensive setup here, there are questions, there are holes all over the place. And to be honest with you, the amount of work that Mings and Kanza have to do, if there is a quick break, or if there's a long ball over the top here, and if they've no margin for error, and it's not fair in a centre half partnership. It's completely different. Once again, if we were to look back at the Leicester game, it's completely different to how we set up there. There is a margin of error. There's someone back there that can mop up the ball. The gap, the spacing here is not great. Not great once more. Luca Dean played this game also. We can see that he is further up, and he's always been tasked with doing absolutely everything on that left-hand side, which in hindsight, as I say, I like him. He does an awful lot in an attacking sense, and he does an awful lot in a defending sense as well. But I think we're going to need to get him more help over there in time to come, specifically with the attacking side of things, because he just can't be allowed to go that far forward on a regular basis, specifically against every single team, because everybody wants to go forward. And it's a trend that's creeping in since the Liverpool game. We can see it here. So shot map was really good against Manchester United in and around the box. We were working targets, we were working shots, and a lot of that was in the second half. We had Courtney House come on for Kanza, who got injured in this game. Coutinho came on for Sanson, and Carney came on for Ings later on in the game as well. So once again, we're seeing different substitutions come on here. We're seeing different people start, and there is an element, once again, of less rigidity and trying more players in more positions, which, I would have expected from somebody like Steven Gerrard when they came in, not knowing the full team. Everton away was a 1-0 win, a weird goal and Emi Buendia header from a corner. We played 2 10s this game as well. Once again, massively open again back in defence. The space between the two centre halves is absolutely huge. We were just playing against an Everton team that had lots of chances at times, but couldn't capitalise on any of them. Once again, it's going to be continual here. The Douglas Luiz position should be further back here to make me feel a small bit safer about the situation. And I think there is a massive gap on the right hand side there that Matty Cash has complete and utter acreage to get into here. So the spacing of our players here isn't exactly ideal. I can understand it once again that we have Coutinho and Buendia who started in the middle of midfield here. Maybe once again the intricate sharp passing was something they wanted to do, but it seems that we wanted to completely not use pace in this instance, and wanted to pass around players to make sure we were trying to drag players out of position before we used our pace. And it's something that I'm not sure works, because if we break down, if the attack breaks down, you've committed so many people into small areas whereby we're leaving gaps around other parts of the field. So it's not an ideal situation. I can understand why it would be done. It looks pretty at times, but the ceiling is high, the ceiling is low, and the floor is even lower, I think, for something like that. Because as I say, if it does break down, we get caught in the counter, or we get caught overrun in midfield. And as we know, our midfield is not our strength at the moment. Shot map was pretty okay. It was uneventful. Like, we've had 3 shots from ridiculous places out here, which aren't ideal. We're not seeing them flying for Aston Villa Football Club. We haven't seen them flying for Aston Villa Football Club since Tommy Hitzelsberger left the club. So, a lot of us are hitting hopes until I see any different. And that's something I would try and eradicate some players from doing, if that makes sense. We made 3 substitutions. Carney came on for Coutinho, Ings for Watkins, and House for Buendia. I'm going to go on a little bit more here because we're in a kind of a decent period here where we're winning, losing, winning, and winning the ones we should win, and we're going to get into more kind of difficult situations in a moment. 3-3 draw with Leeds, one of the best performances over a short period of time that we've had in the season so far. Coutinho got 1 goal, Ramsey got 2 crackers. We played with 2 10s, and the 2 10s were Buendia the 2 10s were Buendia and Coutinho. But as we saw in the field, that Ramsey was given a license to run past midfield and take the ball when Coutinho made hay up there. Once again, we can see why our defense is struggling. There's just massive gap in there. There's a huge gap in there. Our midfield structure is very flat in a lot of ways here. John McGinn is so far back here, probably trying to counteract. Gosh, I don't even know who he would have counteracted on that day because Rafinha was over on the opposite side with Digne. But look how far Digne is forward in comparison here. So we're a bit lopsided in our setup. It's not the worst. It's not the worst setup in the world, as I say, but it's just so different to how the start of the season was. So different. And I don't know whether this is some tactical change that Gerrard has made or whether it's the fact that Douglas Luiz doesn't have the positional discipline and it's not a kick Douglas Luiz situation. I just don't know. It's not a question I can answer from this. All I can do is highlight the fact that we're probably not seeing the position and the defensive midfield position played in the most optimal way here. Whether it's, but we've no idea what way he's been coached to do on the field or what way the team has been set up to play since Coutinho came in at this stage. Our shot map was pretty decent as well here. The 3 goals all came from inside the box. I'm a fan of trying to work the ball to get scores in opportunistic and advantageous positions. I don't like seeing shots wasted. But then again, if you do have opportunities to take shots from outside the box, I'm not against it either. Substitutions that came on was Carney came on for Buendia, who got injured. Young came on for Coutinho, and Chambers came on for Ramsey. We remember that Chambers had just signed for Aston Villa at this stage. So things are still looking up, and this is probably a turning point, I think, when in the Newcastle game, the Kieran Trippier midfield or free kick from the edge of the box hits off Buendia, goes into the back of the net. We had no answer for Newcastle, and Newcastle have gone on to win however many, I think is it 9 and 13 so far. Our setup for this game here once more, we started off with Chambers and Konza as Chambers and Mings in the 2 centre halves. We packed out middle of midfield here. We made Jonjo Shelvey look like a hero. We couldn't get Coutinho on the ball because we packed out the whole lot of midfield. Look at like a reckless nature of getting our fullbacks so high. We had a decent amount of possession in this game. We created some chances, but it's like the whole thing is shifted. It's like, okay, you 2 guys defend and we'll make something happen up top. Like Luke Dean is our second furthest forward player here. Matty Cash is probably our fourth furthest forward player. We don't have the spacing in midfield like we did previously. Remember when we looked at games at the start? I'll just scroll back here. Games at the start of the season, we have a bit more spacing here, where we can see this one is a good example of it. We've got Nakamba right in the middle of the defense. We've got a better spacing in midfield here against Crystal Palace. Now, when we go back down towards Newcastle, our spacing isn't there. We're all up on top of each other, and we've got massive gaps that teams can just play in over the top of our fullbacks, and then our centre halves are scrambling to get out towards that ball. So it's not a good setup. It's not. You can't play kamikaze football like that. It's borderline kamikaze football, and we weren't getting massive amounts of attacking intent from it either. We have Buendia, Watkins, and Coutinho up top. Looking at our shot map here, like look here again, our shot map. A lot of the majority of our shots were from outside the box. So what are we really getting here from playing those fullbacks very, very, very high up, stifling our creativity, not being able to work the ball in the box, not being able to play massive counterattacks? It was just a frustrating game, really frustrating game. Substitutions brought on were Bailey brought on for Buendia, Ings brought on for Watkins, and Carney brought on for McGinn. Newcastle game for me was one of the more frustrating games of the season, and Watford didn't get much better. We absolutely peppered Watford in the game we played them, and how we lost this game is beyond my comprehension of the game of football. It really is. Our midfield set up an awful lot flatter, as we can see here. Once again, I think we're still, like, even though we're playing against a team like Watford that we were peppering, You know, we need to have that buffer zone back there because once again, Luka Dean is the third highest forward player, third highest playing player in the field, and Matty Cash is the fifth highest playing player in the field. Here, we need some sort of a buffer. I think back here, the distance, our midfield, the concession that we have in midfield is too much. It really is too much. And if you're conceding that area in midfield, at least not be conceding it when you're coming back against the play, should I say, when you're trying to retreat back to goal. At least concede it when you're looking at it and it's being played in front of you. So with our defensive midfielder and the likes of McGinn, or the likes of Luis here, should I say, if he's 15, 20 yards back further, at least we're keeping the play in front of us. But you, like, the second that your defensive midfielder has to turn and start running, the second your two fullbacks have to turn and start running, one of your centre halves has to engage out wide, and then you've got somebody trying to get back into a defensive position who's liable to make a mistake or is not having the ball played in front of them, and therefore they can't judge what's going on, and they're only reacting to one area. That one place they can see is who has the ball and who am I chasing. You don't have that wide vision of where other people are moving. That's if you're going backwards. That's just fact, you know, and that's what annoys me about this setup a small bit. Not a small bit, a big bit. Our shot map, look at it. Too many to mention, to be honest with you. We had tons of shots from outside the box. We had tons of shots from inside the box. But the one shot that mattered was the goal that Watford got. And it was a sickener. It was a real cruel blow. And, Watkins came on for Louise, Young came on for Cash, and Bailey came on for Buendia. We went for it. We pushed a lot of forward players on, and we got caught in the break. And I think it was naive from the substitutions that were made here that, we came out of Newcastle game with a draw. We come out of Watford game with a draw. Yes, we would have drawn 3 games in a row, but I think people feel a lot better about those 2 games. Obviously, because we would have picked something up in them. And this is where we need to turn these losses instead of going gung-ho into draws. Came back against Brighton, the team we've liked to play an awful lot. We had Cash and Watkins score. We played two nines in this game here. Once again, our midfield is a small bit scattered. As we can see, our midfield got a lot flatter. But look at all of the space we're taking up here from each other. It's our three forward players. You could throw a blanket over them, as the old phrase goes. I don't like this. Like, we need to have a bit more structure there than everybody takes up the one position. And then if we are going to do that, we need to have a very, very, very solid block in defense. And we just don't have it. Like, look at all the space that's here. You've all these players have to track back. And, if you've got 3 or 4 players, as I said before, you're running back, you're only able to look at one man and you can't affect the play in front of you. You can't anticipate anything if you're running backwards. So I don't know, and I don't know who's to blame with regards to it. I find it very difficult, based on how the team was set up at the start of the season, to think that the team is now set up like this. But I could be wrong. As I say, I could be wrong. I don't know. Shot map here, once again, we had the goal from Cash, which was from outside the box, and the goal from Watkins then was inside the box here, but we had a pretty decent shot map. Sanson came on for Louise, Young came on for Ings, and then we saw Young Tim come on for Coutinho. At this stage, things were still high. There was a decent thought here about where things were going. We won against Brighton, won against 4-0 against Southampton, which was a really great win. Watkins, Louise, Coutinho, and Ings played the 2 nines. One of the first times that I think people really, like, I know we played 2 nines against Brighton and stuff, but this is one of the ones where it really clicked. It really, really clicked for us. Mings and Chambers played in this game as well. 2 centre halves, Luis, McGinn and Ramsey, Ings, Watkins and Coutinho, and we've absolutely peppered them with shots. There was no other winner in this game other than Aston Villa. We were just on fire, and it was a real pleasure to watch this game. Sanson came on for Ings, Bailey came on for Ramsey, and Buendia came on for Coutinho. We were a lot more open once again. As I say, we're seeing the gaps and the spacing between our 2 centre halves is far too much without having that defensive midfielder in there. But this worked for us, and this is one thing I'm sure Steven Gerrard will point to, is that when it works really well, but when it doesn't, it's absolutely dire. We get caught badly and our defenders make mistakes. And, you can talk about, defenders are making mistakes. They shouldn't make mistakes. But like, the fact that they're being left so open and wide, they have to do something. If they don't go to somebody, they're making a mistake. If they do go to somebody, they're making a mistake because they've got so much yardage to cover up for. Our midfield needs to do more and defensively, and it's just apparent when we see the setups. It really is. It's just so apparent. And we move on then to Leeds win 3-0 away. I think we're on the crest of a wave. Coutinho, Cash and Chambers. We'll never forget that goal from Chambers that he scored. We played 2-9s again here. Set up very, very linear in midfield here. Once again, Luca Dean really, really far forward. Don't have that defensive midfielder here, but we do have two people kind of picking up the ball in the middle of midfield. Once again, when it works really well. We've scored 2 goals. We've scored 4 goals. We've scored 3 goals. 9 goals in 3 games. That was big for us at the time. Things were really looking up, and this 2-9s was working, and we were kind of getting away with it at the back because of the fact that we still didn't have that defensive cover. Maybe it was because Chambers was in there and he was a bit more mobile alongside Mings. I don't know, and I'm not going to castigate Konza because I am a big Konza fan as well. But looking at this setup here, and once again, it's horses for courses, and we're playing against a team that plays a very high line, and we went out there and we really schooled them in that game. Our shot map was really, really good. Look at it. We had shots from literally anywhere, and we were trying to score goals and creating good chances. We saw Sanson again. We saw Buendia for Coutinho, and we saw Ashley Young come on for Douglas Luiz. And it's at this point here that the wheels are starting to fall off. The game against West Ham, we thought we could go in there, we could get something out of it. West Ham were poor. They brought on Yarmolenko, he scores, and we really don't have any answer for that. We played with the 2-9s again. Do you know what the strange thing about this is? We set up our team brilliantly this day. Brilliantly. And we stifled West Ham. West Ham didn't have an awful lot of attacking intent. They brought off Mikel Antonio. They brought on Yarmolenko. It was when they got the goal, they got belief, and then they could run from there. And once again, excuse me, once again, Mings and Chambers did really well. They stifled Mikel Antonio. I know he hasn't been playing brilliantly of late, but still, he's a handful to deal with up there. Our shot map was really good. We worked the ball into the box. We had chances. The goal that Ramsey scored was an absolute banger. I know we were 2-0 down at that stage and bring it back to 2-1, but it was a really great goal. Luca Dean got injured early on in this game. He'd go off with the hamstring injury. Ashley Young comes on at left back. Bailey comes on for Ings and Buendia comes on for Luiz. So we kind of had to chase at this stage when we were bringing Bailey and Buendia on later on in the game. Again, we should have at least got a point out of again. And you're turning losses into draws. There's a feel-good factor about things. Like if we're 1-0 down and Ramsey pings that one into the top corner with only 3 or 4 minutes left, excuse me, I can't remember when it was, we feel an awful lot better about this game. But it's not. It's a 2-1 loss, and we feel like we've chucked away at least 1 point, because West Ham didn't play really great against us. Go on to the Arsenal game. Completely let them do what they wanted in the first 20 minutes and only started to attack in the last 20 and to see if we could get something back. The goal Saka scores is really preventable goal. It comes from a free kick that probably shouldn't have been given, but we completely tuned out for the free kick. Emi Martinez gets stick for not saving it. It comes through a forest of bodies. I'm not too concerned about that. It was a good strike. It was, it was an opportunistic strike. I don't really blame Martinez for it. I blame us more so for the fact that we literally just stood back and applauded Arsenal for the first 25-30 minutes. Our setup was only okay. Putting Ashley Young that high up in a defensive position for me is a bit mad. Jacob Ramsey played really well, I thought, in this game. He is, we're tasked with trying to plug this here with 3 players. It's like we're not really sure what we're doing here in midfield and we're following players around. These maps can kind of tell a story about where we're dragged out of position too. This very much looks like we're dragged out of position in a lot of instances here. Because traditionally we just haven't set up like that, even when we were playing well. And when we're not playing well, we haven't set up like this. We're being dragged out of position. But fair play to Jacob Ramsey trying to do something. We've seen him play in a forward 10 position. We've seen him come back, help out as a 6 here. We've seen him play as an 8. We've seen him play a bit further wider this season. He has been probably our standout player of the season so far. And, you'd expect a 19, 20-year-old maybe to be dragged out of position from time to time, because these only 19, 20. It's the more senior players that we wouldn't. Like, what's Buendia doing back here in a 6th position? Is he being tasked to that? Is he being tasked to follow somebody? I'm not quite sure. They would have set up with Partey and I think it was Xhaka played as their 2 defensive midfielders here. We seem to give them time and space, and they're not bad footballers. And if I remember rightly, Thomas Partey had a fantastic game this day too. Our shot map was meager. Our shots inside the box came at the end of the game. You know, we probably could have got a 1-1 draw out of this. I think we would have been fortunate to do so. But the substitutions that were made were Traore came on for Ramsey, Bailey came on for Bundy, and Ings came on for Watkins, you know, in this game. So we're beginning to see, you know, it's a case of let's throw the attacking talent at the field as opposed to maybe let's look for a statistic or a tactical change that we can make to shore us up and maybe create a better fluidity and transition of attack as opposed to let's bring on pace and another striker. I'm a bit concerned about that. You know, I don't know. Do we have that player that can come in and dictate pace in the middle of midfield and draw people out? Can we change that tactic on the fly? I think this game showed that we did come into it when we tried the attacking talent, but when you look back at other games like the Watford game, it shows that we can't really just turn on that guile when we need to do it. Wolves, again, not going to spend too much time here on Wolves. We were taken to the cleaners against Wolves. Wasn't a really we had a lot of shots against Wolves, should I say. You know, Watkins scored from the penalty spot at the end. Another game we probably could have got a draw from. It would have been a smash and grab draw, absolutely, because Wolves were just so on top in the first half. But like our setup here, John McGinn was playing as a 6 this day. We started with Bailey and we started with Sanson in midfield too. You know, once again, I'm not quite sure that the midfield looks very jointed there. We played with Bailey as up top as a 9. He was the furthest forward player. He was pretty ineffectual. Couldn't get his pace going at all. You know, and we couldn't get his pace going because we couldn't get a foothold in the game. We couldn't get a foothold in the game at all. Luke Dean goes off early. Ashley Young comes on. You know, stifles. I think that really does stifle us, to be honest with you, and you guys will know that. And I'm not going to go on like a broken record. When Luke Dean does have to go off and Ashley Young comes on, we do get less productivity or production from that left back position. Specifically in an attacking sense. Next, then we're looking at Spurs, which is the last game 4-0. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. We were all over the place, to be honest with you. Not Ashley Young. Harry Kane could have his way with us. Was just dropping off into this position once again. If Douglas Luiz has the play in front of him, and we have somebody else back here in this position, look how crowded we are. Look how far forward Luke Dean is. Just doesn't make any sense. This does not make any sense. It doesn't make any tactical sense. And yeah, we did play brilliantly at times, and we can see we created a ton of chances. But the goals we conceded, guys, were because of this back here. We need to fix it. It's just like it's no point creating 30 chances in the game if we have a big fat duck egg against our name at the end of it, and they have a big 4 against their name. You know, it means a hill of beans. If you do that, it means nothing, absolutely nothing. It's a moral victory, and no one wants that. You know, hunker down if you need to. Bring back your defensive midfielder. Get more structured in defense. We've enough good players that we can find a way to create width without Luke Dean being the third furthest man forward or the second furthest man forward. We've enough good players in the field where we don't need Ings, Watkins, and Coutinho to be standing on each other's toes, all within 5 square feet of each other, what you can see here. We're taking our good players out of the game by bottling the players up ourselves, is what we're doing. Or at very worst, that's at best. Or at worst, what we're doing is we have a game plan where we play into certain zones of the field, and it's a case of having a man in there, and that's ridiculously easy to defend. So my takeaways from this, guys, from looking at the positional analysis and everything here, is that the massive drop-off in our structure from when Nakamba isn't in the team, it's not just something people are saying, it's actual fact. We do not have that structure there. It's led to us going way too gung-ho far forward, specifically in the full-back positions, and not having anyone back there. It's creating massive lack of coherent spacing in our full-back or in our centre-back position, which is making them make mistakes. Not giving them a pass. Some of the mistakes they've made have been absolutely mindless, but not giving them a pass. And as we can see, when we look up top, our players are standing on top of each other at very best, or at worst, we've got a specific area that we need to play the ball into, and someone has to meet that area, which for me, a team should be able to figure that out within the first 10-15 minutes and stop it really easily. And if we don't have ways of making sure that the players that have that bit of guile if we don't have ways of maybe of giving them autonomy to use that guile, well, then I don't really know why we have them in the team whatsoever. So there's some really frustrating things that I have seen. I don't think it's all Steven Gerrard's fault. I don't think it's all the tactics or the system's fault. I think Steven Gerrard is within his rights to talk about players. Players aren't doing what I want. I can see, I can make a very, very strong argument that players aren't doing what Steven Gerrard wants here, just looking at the positional map, because there is no way in my mind that you would, like, there is no philosophy that I know of. And what do I know? What do I know is a big caveat here. But I don't know of any manager that would set up players to have average positions in some of the games that we've seen, of the positions that they have turned out to be in. Specifically in the midfield position, and specifically, leaving our defence so open. So yes, there's lots of blame to go around. We will blame Steven Gerrard for some areas. We will blame the players for some areas. But I think that there's another piece in this as well. So my lasting kind of hypothesis from this as well is that Steven Gerrard is tinkering. He is changing. He is looking. He's experimenting at times. You can see it at the start. Look at his substitutions. We've made a ton of substitutions. I'll give you some numbers here. Bailey's been brought on 7 times. Buendia has been brought on 7 times. Young has been brought on 9 times. Carney's been brought on 8 times. Sanson's been brought on 7 times. Ings has been brought on 5 times. So it's not the same subs every time. A lot of managers get labeled as, oh, he brings on the same guys at the exact same time in games. We're making different substitutions. We've brought on El Ghazi twice when he first came in. Trezeguet's got to go off the bench. Traore's come off the bench twice. Axel Tuanzebe was getting games off the bench when he was still here. So labeling the rigidity of Steven Gerrard, I think is unfair. When we look at what he's done. When we look at people who've scored since Steven Gerrard came in, Watkins has 6 goals, Mings has 1 goal, Target has 1 goal, McGinn has 1 goal, Konza has 2, Ramsey has 5. We've had 1 own goal. Ings has had 2 goals, Coutinho has had 4, Cash has had 2, Luis has had 1, and Chambers has had 1. So we have a nice split of goal scorers. Obviously, we'd like to see Ings have more goals, and we'd probably like to see our set pieces garner more goals, which hasn't been huge since Steven Gerrard came in. But we've got, I suppose, really, if we look at, Watkins has 6, Ramsey has 5, Coutinho has 4. So if you're talking about, arguably, you could say that they're starting in more advanced positions. We've gotten 15 goals from those players since Gerrard has come into the team, since he's come in to take over the team, and we would like to see more, obviously. Formation wise, we've played with 2 9s 7 times since Gerrard has come in with the team. We've played with 2 10s 11 times. Breakdown of those. So when we've played 2 9s, we've won 3 games and we've lost 4 games. When we've played 2 10s, which is a bigger sample set from 11 games, we've won 4 games, we've drawn 2 games, and we've lost 5. So the games that we won when we played with 2 10s are Brighton, Everton, Leicester, and Norwich. And the games that we won when we played 2 9s are Brighton, Southampton, and Leeds. It's a really interesting one, like our back partnership, our back 2 partnership of the 20 games that we've played under Steven Gerrard. Mings and Konza have started 12 of those games. Midfield wise, since Gerrard has come in, Luis has started 17 games in midfield, McGinn has started 19 games in midfield, and Ramsey has started 18 games in midfield, with Nakamba starting 5 and Sanson starting 2. Now, one of the biggest things that I would say is that Ramsey has started every single game since Liverpool, and in the Liverpool game, Nakamba got injured. So Ramsey has been a mainstay in that midfield. He's been the only mainstay in that midfield since that Liverpool game, which is interesting. So he has tweaked and tinkered in that area, but maybe not as much as we would like to see. But then again, maybe he doesn't we aren't blessed with players in there. That's one of the biggest reasons, is all the players that we have playing in midfield are very similar. So I don't know where we go from here with regards to this is the next thing. So this is just kind of a summary of what's happened. This is, as I said, this isn't me trying to convince you Steven Gerrard's a great manager or anything like that. I think there's plenty of blame to go around. I think the players are doing things that they're not being asked to do. I think that we've got no defensive discipline in midfield, which we've missed since Nakamba. And for all the great attacking work Luca Dean does, if he is told to be that far forward so much within the game, well, then we do have problems, because with the creative aspects that we have in this team, we surely will be able to supplement that while keeping Luca Dean back further. Defensive stability is what we need within this team, and that's not, I don't need to be a scholar or a saint to be able to tell you that. Defensive stability. And I think that, maybe we will see this if we go back to the days when Marvelous Nakamba comes back into the team, and potentially comes back in this weekend. If we go back to the days where we start setting up like this, we could be an awful lot more of a solid outfit, and it could give us more space and time for our players up front to be able to get on the ball and to try and work their magic, for the likes of Coutinho, Buendia, Ings, and Watkins. I said I was going to do this over 20 minutes. I failed, and I'm now back into the 1 hour territory again. This is my third time doing it. This is my third hour of talking about this. So thank you so much to everybody for watching. I'm not going to go on a big, massive tangent to finish off this. Really appreciate everything you do for the podcast. If you could really like this, I'd really appreciate it. Also, if you could listen out for audio, our audio podcast on Spotify, on Apple Music, wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be doing more audio podcasts as we ramp up our content into the off season. So please subscribe on our audio podcast as well. Really, really helps us out. So if you are a YouTube listener or a YouTube watcher, some of the podcasts in the future, at least one a week, will not be on YouTube. It will be on audio podcasts. So please help us out in that as well. And all you got to do is download it, and you can listen to it through there. It costs you nothing to do so. So thanks very much, everybody. This has been a tiring, but I like to think it's been an in-depth, and I could have gone on and spoken about an awful lot of things, a lot more things here. I got into the statistical analysis of it a small bit more, but just looking at, I suppose, the teams that we put out and the formational setups and what I can kind of draw from it. I hope this has been good for you guys. I'd love to have actually had this more interactive with people asking questions about the games to see if we could answer them. I could have gone over some games too quickly. I mean, I've gone into some detail on other games. So, when the season is over, we will go back and look at maybe some games that we think have been turning points within the season. Ideally, one of those, I think, is going to be when Nakamba gets injured, and then we look at other ones then from there on in. But for now, this is going to tie up the Steven Gerrard season so far. Hopefully, we see we've got other things to talk about in the last 6 games as we rocket up the league, and hopefully we can finish this with a flourish. But until then, guys, we will be back with another podcast on Friday. We will be doing the Team Sheet Tantrum with the Villa View on Saturday, which will be live here on our channel and on the Villa View, so you can watch it on both of those channels as well. Thanks very much for everything you do, guys. Give this a like. And lastly, all that's left to say is up the Villa.